And welcome back, and we're getting to the end of the month now with the higher plus 5 a day. It is the 27th of April, and let's go with the first question. Right, it's a bounds question. I'm not a fan of bounds questions, but anyway, let's go. So C, well actually let's read the whole question. So C 20,000, M 0.24, N, find the minimum value. So they just want the lowest value. So let's think ahead a little bit first of all, just before we do the rest. So the minimum value is going to be the smallest value of L divided by the biggest value I can. So I'm going to call that upper of M and the biggest value of N. In other words, if you divide by a bigger number, you're going to end up with a smaller number. Let's do the usual thing because it's marks in an exam. So I need 20, is that 20,000? Yeah, 20,000 to three sig fig. Okay, that's quite mean. So the sig fig above is 20100. In other words, I'm changing the third sig fig, and the sig fig below is 19900. So the numbers in between are 19950. And remember, I need the lowest one. And the number above is 20050. Wow, that's quite horrible. M, hopefully M is slightly easier. Let's write C, so I know that's C. So M is 2 sig fig. Okay, so that one means a bit more normal. So the sig fig above is 0.25 and the sig fig below is 0.23, which means the lowest number is 0.235 and the highest number is 0.245. That one's slightly more straightforward. N is 2 sig fig as well, so you have to be careful here. So the second sig fig above is 51 and the second sig fig below is 49, which means my range is 49.5 up to 50.5. Now remember what I said right at the start. I need the lowest value of C, the highest value of M, and the highest value of N. I'm going to put all that in my calculation in one go. So it's going to be 19950 divided by 0.245 multiplied by 50.5. Calculator out, and that gives me, well, my calculator says 1612446,959. And I'm actually going to write all of that down because it doesn't tell me how many decimal places to do. So 1612 spot 446959. And again, without any more information, give more decimal places than not for this sort of question because it's all about accuracy. That's the whole point of the question. Next question. It looks like we have a vectors question. OBCD is a parallelogram. So obviously parallelogram really important because it means that OD is the same as BC and CD is the same as OB. And it says O to B is B, so that's B, and I'm going to put the arrow on nice and clearly. It also means that D to C is B as well, but I won't write that on because I think I know what's going to come. O to C is a diagonal. Okay, interesting. So O to C is C, and it says P is a point on CD such that CP PD is 1 to 2. So in other words, that's a third, and that's going to be 2/3. Now I'm going to read ahead here, just see what it wants. So it wants BP, that makes sense, and then it wants PQ, which is 2BP. Oh, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. It tells me that PQ is 2BP, and it wants to show it's a straight line. Okay, so I can see where this is going. So I'm going to have to work out BP, and I'm going to have to work out BQ or PQ, one or the other. And that's why the first step is helping me or giving me a hint to that. So the first step it wants BP. And the way I'm going to work out BP, it says thinking about it, is I am going to do B to O, because I've got that, plus O to C, because I'm given that, plus a third of C to D. Okay, that makes sense. So let's write these out neatly. So B to O is the opposite way, so it's minus B. O to C is given in the question, which is C. And C to D is the opposite of O to B. In other words, it's B to O, which is minus B. So therefore, I'm taking away a third of B. Let's add these things together. Well, C is just C. And then a whole minus another third, it's minus 4/3. So that's going to be minus 4/3 B. Yeah, that's okay. And then it tells me that P to Q is 2 lots of B to P. And I'm going to write that down here. So that means that P to Q is 2 lots of the things I've just worked out. So it's going to be 2C minus 8/3B. So I basically just double the thing I've just worked out. And I need to show that O to D to Q is a straight line. Now the way I'm going to do that is O to D to Q. So just to be clear, that line there, isn't it? So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to write down O to D, because actually I know that one. O to D is just, actually I don't know that one, do I? I need to work that one out. So O to D is going to be the same as B to C, which is minus B plus c. So in other words, just to be clear there, because it's a parallelogram, it's the same as that there. So I'm happy with that. So it's minus b plus c. Then I also need to work out what either O to Q is or D to Q is. And I think I'm going to do O to Q. So I'm going to say that O to Q is the same as O to B. And then I can just do B to Q, which I've pretty much just worked out because it's going to be B to P plus P to Q. Or in other words, 3 lots of B to P. So therefore O to B is going to be B in the question, plus 3 lots of, to be clear what I'm doing, so I'm doing 3 lots of this, because it tells me that P to Q is twice as large. So 3 lots of that is going to be plus 3C, and minus, well, 4 times 4 over 3, 3's cancel, is minus 4B. And that gives me, well, 3C plus B minus 4B is going to give me minus 3B plus 3C. And the reason I wrote it like that is because hopefully you can clearly see that this thing here is just a multiple of this thing here. However, I need to write that. I need to write my conclusion. So your conclusion will say something like this. It will say nice and clearly, I'm saying that O to Q is equal to 3 times O to D. So that's my parallel vector statement. And O to Q and O to D share point O. And then the conclusion, so therefore O to D to Q is a straight line. So I need to have said 2 things. One, showing that one's a multiple of the other, and secondly, say clearly that they share a point. And that's it. Good question. Not too hard, but also not too easy. Good question. Next question. Looks like we have more coordinate geometry. Shown is a straight line that passes through, gives me 2 points. Find the equation of the line. Well, let's just do that because I suspect I know I'm going to have to use that in some way in the next part. So I've got a line, and for any line I need the M and I need the C. Well, to get from A to B, I go up 12, difference between 4 and 16, and I go across 4. And so therefore 12 divided by 4 is 3, which means my M is 3, which means the equation of my line is y equals 3x plus C, and I don't know what C is. So let's just use 1, 4. So therefore 4 is going to be 3 times 1, which is 3, plus C, which I don't know, which means that C is equal to 1. So therefore y is equal to 3x plus 1. Not too bad. I suspect the bad bit is coming, and here it is. Find the shortest distance between the line and the origin. Now, if you've seen one of these questions before, you know where I'm going to go. The shortest distance is defined to be a perpendicular line that joins the origin to that line. Now, because I know the gradient of the line I've just worked out is 3, the equation, I'm going to do it in red, and you can see what I'm doing. So I need the equation of the red line. So the equation of the red line, well, it's going to be the perpendicular to the line I've just worked out. So it's going to have the gradient of minus a third. And notably, it goes to the origin, so there's no C term. So that's going to have the equation y equals minus a third x. And I need to work out this point here, which I'm going to call D for no obvious reason, which is where the 2 lines meet. So that is where the line I've just worked out meets the line that I worked out above, which is 3x plus 1. So I've been going funny. Now, a few ways of doing this, but common phrase, if you've seen other videos of mine, multiply everything by 3, which gives me minus x is equal to 9x plus 3. And then I'm going to add x to both sides and divide by 3, which is going to tell me that x is equal to 3 or minus 3 over 10. And look at my diagram, minus 3 over 10 kind of looks about right. Now I'm going to use this equation here. I can use either equation, but this is the easiest one. So if x equals minus 3 over 10, then y is minus a third of that, which means my y is going to be 1 over 10. Let's be really clear what I've got. So I've got the point O, which is my origin, which is 0, 0. And I've got the point D that I've just worked out, which is minus 3 over 10, 3 over 10, and 1 over 10. And then I need to work out the distance between those 2 points, because that is my shortest distance. How do I do that? Well, it's just Pythagoras. So 3 over 10 squared plus 1 over 10 squared. Calculator out. And the calculator tells me it's root 10 over 10. In fact, I will write that down. So root 10 over 10. So that's my exact value. If I press the S to D button, that's 0.316. And either of those two are going to be my answer. And that is it, today done. Today, or in fact this month as a whole, has been really quite tricky. And again, this sort of distance question has come up a couple of times, but it is questions you need to know. So that's why we do this. So good questions today. Let me know how they went for you. Like, subscribe. See you tomorrow.